So before you start this tutorial, on the screen now is my render times for my standard version and my octane version. I'm not an expert in standard because I tend to use octane nowadays. It was very quick, just over an hour. You could probably make this one better quality if you spent more time, but I was just concentrating more on the animation and not texturing the environment, but you can do that once you complete it. In Octane, it may seem daunting that it's render time of 23 hours, but that's due to turbulence. Render time's quicker depending on your graphics card and if you reduce the quality a bit in your render settings. If you're saving it as a PNG file, you can just render this overnight. So I've done my best to explain everything I'm doing, but please look at my computer and follow along that way. Okay, so first we're going to go to the website www.mixermode.com. We choose our character, a crash dummy character. We're going to need him in a T-pose. Download that. 30 seconds a frame, FBX. Keep all those settings the same and click your first animation. His next animation, we're going to have him stretching. The frame rate is 105, so that's about 3 seconds. That's all looking good. Click download. Some arm stretching. I think all this is fine, so click download. So I'm going to choose the floating animation. I feel like it's going a little bit too fast, so let's dial that down a little bit. Yeah, I think that's good. I'm just going to maximize these frames so we've got more to play with when we animate. And we click download. We'll use this one. So I'll click download. So I'm going to choose this samba dancing. Can be anyone you want, it doesn't make a difference. And we'll click download. Okay, so now you've got all your animations. We're gonna place them into a folder so we stay organized. So we've got jetpack animations, and we'll just grab the files that we downloaded and pop them in there. So in Cinema 4D, let's start merging these animations. So start from the top and work our way down. Import, okay. Do you want to assign takes? Just click no. And there's our character. To be able to move him around and stuff, we want to put him in a null object. So just left click on the skeleton and left click on that one. And then hold down Alt and push G. Where it says null, so let's name this arm stretch, and let's merge the next file, floating. So click on that, open, okay, no, left click on both of these, Alt G, and double click left on the mouse and rename floating, and merge the next file, which is landing. Alt G, rename, left click, landing, and merge the next file, next stretch. Create a null, Alt G, double click on the left mouse button and rename next stretch. File, merge, samba dancing, okay, no to reassign takes, select the animation, Alt G, and let's just put dancing, and I think it's the last one, merge the T-pose, select the T-pose, Alt G, double left click, T-pose. Okay, so they're all named, and to stay organized, we're gonna place this in the order of the animation. So first it would be him as T-pose. If you don't have a T-pose and you do it without, you get this funny, weird looking animation. So that will just run for one frame. Then it will be followed by, I'm going to have the neck stretch, then the arm stretch, then the floating, then the landing, and then the dancing because he's happy. So let's just hide all of these. So just turn these lights red. If you click play, that's all that's going to happen. So now we've got animate. So for the first one, we're going to click on the T-pose, go to at the top where it says animate, scroll down to add motion clip, left click. And for this one only, we want to keep this box checked where it says remove included animation from the original object. Click OK. That has now in turn brought this thing up, which is a timeline. So if we right click on that and click open in timeline, you can see our animation for the T-pose has been loaded up. If for any reason this doesn't load up, just close it down again and do it again. Sometimes for whatever reason it doesn't show, so don't panic. Okay, so we got that. Let's go to the next stretch and we're going to do the same thing, apart from this time we're going to uncheck this. Remove included animation from original object. Click OK. That's brought up that. Go to your timeline and you've noticed the next stretch is now here. So we're just going to drag it out onto the timeline. Left click that and just move it across. And we want to connect this, so we're just going to move this over so it's overlapping. If you push 2 on the keyboard, we can shrink this so we can get a better view. And then if you click on 1 while holding left on the mouse, we can move it over. Still can't see the end, so we'll click on 2 while holding the left mouse button, shrink it. 1 to move it over. Okay, so that's how long the animation is. So if we click 2 and hold the left mouse button, you kind of zoom out, and if we move it right, you zoom in. So if you want to get a bit more detailed, you can do that. Okay, so if I just scrub through it, you can see what's happening. He's in the T-pose, and then he moves his neck. So let's go to arm stretch and animate, add motion clip, click OK. Go to timeline, drag that over and overlap it for now. Go to floating, animate, add motion clip, OK. Click on the floating in your timeline, move it across and just bring it over. Landing, animate, add motion clip, OK. Click on it here on the left and bring it across, overlap it. And your last one is the dancing, so go to animate, add motion clip, click OK, and then bring that across. So in the timeline, you can see I can only scrub up to 90, and our animations is way over, what is it, 1320 or whatever. So in here we'll just click 1400, push enter, and on this you can double click or you can just drag. I like just a double click. When we push play now, we can see what we got. Stretches his arm, rolls his neck, starts to float. He lands, and then he dances. So you can see a few issues. When he lands, if this is the floor, he's going through the floor. So let's just put a floor down so we can see where we. So starting in T-pose, everything is okay. until he lands. So what we're going to do, I'm going to make a few adjustments. So if we zoom it, the T-pose was 1 frame, and then after that he's into rolling his neck, which goes up to 105, which is, I don't know, 3 seconds. I think that's too long. I'm gonna move it down to just a little bit of a neck stretch, and I'm gonna move this over. The more you move it in, the more well it's blended. If it's there, it goes from the neck stretch into the arm stretch. It doesn't look as smooth. So if we move it across more, it will blend, look a bit more smoother. So the neck stretch is from, okay, so 63 to about 320, which I think is too long again. So I'm just gonna move that down a little bit. That's okay, I guess. So let's just bring this floating across now. Okay, so next he's gonna land, so let's move that across. And then finally the dancing. And we can just leave the dancing as it is, because you can make this animation however long you want. It's when you render it out, it's to whatever frame, so that doesn't need to be edited. The landing, however, as we said before, he's going through the floor. We're going to need to create a pivot object, and if he's in the air, when he takes off this floating, we're going to have to make him go up and then come down. To do that, so to make him go up, what we're going to do is click on animate pivot object, and we'll call this pivot object float. Then we're going to left click on the floating animation, which is this one. On the right hand side, we're going to click on advanced, and we're going to just drag that pivot object in there. And we're going to do the same for his landing. So animate pivot object, and let's just add landing on this. So that's the landing. Left click on that, and we're going to drag pivot object into this one and in advanced, which we did the same for that one. Okay, turn off the second pivot object. So if we scroll through the animation, after his his arm stretch, we want him to go up. Move the float up. We can see what's happening here. He's going to go up. He's there. He's stretching, and then he goes up. If this wasn't a jetpack animation, it might look a bit weird, but you've got to remember he's going to have a jetpack on, so the power of the jetpack makes him go up, which is fine. And then he lands, but he's landing through the floor. So let's click on the landing pivot, and let's just bring it up at the end of his landing, so he's now on the floor. And if we rewind that, we can see he stretches, he goes up, he goes down, he doesn't go through the floor, and then he breaks into some dancing. We can try to make that a little bit more smoother. So taking the last clip of him dancing, which is this one, and maybe just drag it a bit more left, see what we got. So that doesn't look too bad. Gets up and then straight into some dancing. So now we want to combine this all together and export it out as an FBX. So what we want to do is go to the timeline. I'm going to push 2 make that smaller. Make sure everything is highlighted. So left click, drag, select that. Go to motion system, and we are going to bake clips. So just click left, and that's converted it into this file, one file. After that, click on it, make sure it's highlighted, go to motion system and go to convert layer to keyframe animation. Okay, once that's done, everything is baked into this one pose. So all these are still hiding, so we can see if that's worked. And if we scroll through, everything's looking good. Now that's baked and done the keyframe animation, we can delete all these other ones, we don't need them. So let's just delete that. And we're just going to double click that and rename that. Let's just call this jet pack animation. Export this to an FBX. We're going to click File, go down to Export, FBX. Just leave this as it is and push OK. This is where you're going to save it. You can call it the jetpack animation. So leave that FBX dot there. Click OK, save that. Okay, just to make sure everything has gone OK. Click File, just open a new one, merge, and click your jetpack animation. Open. Don't need this. And push play and see if it works. But first we just need to make these frames a bit more. So let's just type 1000 so it can play. And this is our final animation. One thing you might be wondering, if he is going over some spikes, then why haven't I moved him going from left to right? And the reason is because I'm going to keyframe him. Okay, so in Cinema 4D, merge your jetpack animation FBX that you made. Click OK. Get rid of the Cinema 4D editor. And let's put down a floor. Gonna have a backdrop. To do that, we're gonna create a cube. Bring that up to the floor. Create a material down the bottom here. Double click left mouse button. Double click again, add color, just choose any color for now, and drag and drop that on the cube. Make it editable, click on scale and just go by eye. So just make that type of size, bring it up a bit, and width wise, just like a bigger cube basically. Once you got a size roughly like that, click on Move tool, go to Polygons, and click the front, highlight it, push delete, click the sides, highlight, delete, and click the top, highlight, delete. Select model and bring your cube up a little bit. If it's too tall, go to scale and just move that down a bit, but something like that for now. So we're going to click on edges, click on the edge, right click and select bevel. On the right hand side, just increase this so we've got a bit of a curve, and the subdivision, do the same. It's my settings, doesn't have to be perfect, but something like this is fine. Okay, so we're gonna create the two platforms first. So to do that, we're gonna click on this cube, hold down the left mouse button, and click on disk. Okay, bring your disk up. To make it a bit more rounder, we're gonna type in 32 rotational segments. Doesn't have to be exact. It's a bit smoother. And let's just zoom in a bit. Make it edible and click on polygons. Go to select, loop selection, left click once so it's all highlighted. Click on move, hold down Control, and with your mouse with the left button just move upwards so we extrude this. Something like that is fine. Okay, so this disk, let's just name this start. And on this side we are going to create the landing target. So go to cube, hold down left button and release on disk. Let's move that over and up. Let's change this rotation segments to 32 to make it a bit more smooth. And shrink the outer radius to say 35. Before we go any further, let's duplicate this. So hold down Control, left click on disk and drag your cursor up. Go back to disk. We're going to extrude this. So NB, bring up your shading lines. So on disk, make it edible. And go to select, go to loop selection and click once on your disk. Go to move tool, hold down Control and left click on your mouse and just bring it up like so. Go back to model. Now on your disk 2, let's go to outer radius and make it a little bit bigger. Like so. Inner radius, we want to create a hole in the middle. So just toggle with it to it matches the first cylinder. Duplicate this before we make it editable. Go back to disk 1. It's looking good. Make that editable. Click on polygons. Select loop selection. Click once. Click back on move. Hold down Control, left click and raise that up. Go to disk 2. And we're going to do the same as before. So outer radius, let's just make it a bit bigger. Doesn't have to be perfect. Inner radius. So on that disk, just Control, drag it up, make another copy. Back on disk 2, make it editable. Polygons, select, loop selection, click once, move, hold down Control, and bring that up. Here's a landing target image. I want to model my one on this one. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rings. Our fourth one, let's do the same. Outer ring, bring it out. Inner ring, to about there. Duplicate it. Go back to disk 3, make it editable. Select, loop selection, click once, move, Control, bring that up. Disk 4, our last one. Outer radius, out like so. Inner radius, left click, make it editable. Select, loop selection, select, loop selection, move, hold down Control, and bring that up. So let's just group this all up together. Click on disk, click on disk 4 while holding Shift, Alt G, double left click on null, and let's name this landing target. Now that's grouped together. If we move this along, it's all in one piece. Let's click on cube, Let's click on scale and make this a little bit wider. Now we're going to create the spikes. Let's move our character to the side for now. Let's click on cube and make it editable. So click on scale. On the top, let's just shrink it down to where the spikes will be. We can rotate around so we can line up a bit better. And let's extend it, like so. Click on move, bring it down to the floor. Let's move this landing target over a little bit. Okay, let's name this cube spike base. Okay, now for the spikes, go to cube and select cone. And so let's bring this up. So at the moment it's way too big. Let's make that editable. Click on scale. Let's rotate to get a better view. And let's shrink that down. Make it a bit pointy. Something like that looks okay. And bring that down to base. Roughly that. Click on cone and control, left click, move it up. We're going to have a formation of maybe 3 spikes, 4 spikes in the middle, 3 spikes. So let's just space this out a bit, and at this stage you just want to keep duplicating. So to do that, all it is control, left click and drag it up. So that's row 1. So once you've duplicated all those spikes by pushing control, left click in, let's bunch those all up together. So left click on the very first cone, hold shift, left click on cone number 9, push alt and G, and let's just rename this spikes. Okay, so now we are going to create the jetpack. Let's just get a side view. So click on your jetpack animation. You can click on R, rotate, and just bring him around. Okay, so just going to make a simple jetpack. You can download one from a 3D model website if you want, but for this tutorial we're just going to make one. So going to left click on cube and select capsule. Let's just bring this up and to the side. It's looking rather big at the moment, so make it editable. Click on scale and let's just shrink this down. Looks okay. So something like 2 cylinders on his back for the jets. But something roughly like that is fine. Let's duplicate that so it's nice and even. And let's move this one to the side. So let's click on cube, select that. Let's move this across. Make that editable. Click on scale and let's just shrink this right down, width wise. Move that and line it up with line up with the cylinders on the back. Like that's fine. You can middle click and you could use these different perspectives, but I quite like just hovering around it. For turbulence we need a emitter, so we're going to just stick 2 spears in the bottom of this. So click spear, move that over, make segments 32, make it smooth, and let's reduce that down. And you can either hide it or you can have it protruding out a little bit. You might have something like that, and control and duplicate that and move the other one across. Need a simple waist strap. Let's click on a torus, slice it, rotate. Let's move it over to the jetpack. Click back on torus, go to object and reduce the pipe radius. So something like 7, that's fine. And from here let's make the torus editable and click on scale. And now we're just going to line it up with the jetpack. So width wise, let's bring that down. Let's move it up. Let's make sure it's touching the jetpack. Let's move our character over a little bit. Okay, so just roughly have it around his waist at a decent level. That should be fine. Make sure all areas are touching. Make sure it's touching and avoid this. I have to bring it out a bit. That looks okay. Okay, so now let's connect all that and put that into a null. So from capsule to torus, left click on capsule, left click on torus while holding shift and alt G and rename that jetpack. Okay, so how do we get the jetpack to stick to our crash dummy? You're gonna connect it to his skeleton. So let's just line this up a little bit better. Okay, that looks good. Okay, go to your jetpack animation, click on the bones, and wherever you attach it to the bones, your object will move with it. So as it's his back, probably his spine is good. So grab your jetpack and just drop that into his spine. Make sure it's not on his body. If it looks okay, zoom out, push play and see what you got. Let's extend the frames to 1000 for now. Okay, so that's looking good to me. Now we want him to go from this area to this area. So before we move on, let's just make this a little bit even to this one. So click on landing target and just scale that up. Something like that. Looks cool. So the 200, let's click on jetpack and rotate him, push R, bring him around to the camera and record active object. Push play, let's see when he lands. It's about there, 420. So let's get him straight. And let's move him across to the middle. Have him face the camera, push R, and record active object. Now if you rewind this, this is what we got so far. It's looking a little bit boring. We should have him go up a little bit. So roughly halfway, let's say 300. Let's bring him up, and also let's have him face forward because he's serious about what he's doing, and push record active object. And now this is his path that he'll be taking, and let's see how that looks. It's a little bit weird there, so I'm just gonna bring this last keyframe in a bit. That's better. So just as he drops is where I got my keyframe. Okay, so one thing I wanted to do with our jetpack animation is just give him a simple controller. So to do that, go up to the cube and we're gonna take another capsule and make it editable. Shrink this down, go to scale. Okay, he's gonna line it up with his hand. R to rotate it. Something like that is okay. Rename this controller. And we're gonna drag that into the jetpack animation bones, and this time it's on his right hand. So go into right shoulder and keep going through the bones until you find his hand, which is under the forearm. And take your controller, just drag that in there. Just make sure everything's okay. Okay, so that's good. The next part of the tutorial will be for turbulence. If you do not have that, just skip to the next section. Okay, for turbulence, we are going to stick an emitter onto these little balls, spears that we created in his jetpack. So find his jetpack, and that's a spear. You're going to go to tags, turbulence, turbulence emitter. In the emitter section, we're going to change where it says channels, density value, set that to 1. Force, let's put the pressure to 200. And the direction, I'm going to choose this first one. I'm going to put -1 That's 20. I'm learning this software, so I'm not an expert. I know how to get it to work with Octane. If you follow these settings, you'll get it to work with Octane. So once we've done those settings for the emitter, we're going to go to turbulence and load up a container. Inside container, go to container, and for me, the settings I've got are going to be 800 by 500 by 400. Now just make sure you click on container, bring that up, and make sure the container covers all the areas where the jetpack will be. That's good. Try not to make the container too big, because the bigger the container, the more calculations that your computer will need to do. So yeah, just be conservative. For me, this is fine. I've already done a test and it's not giving my computer any problems. Inside container, we are going to change some more settings. So we're going to go to simulation and wind direction. On the first column, I'm going to have -50. So that's going to help the smoke blow down. And the speed is kind of like the strength. And I'm going to have 15. Next one is voricity. I'm going to take 10. The channel is going to be density. Next one is turbulence. I'm going to have 25. And the channel will be density. Largest size I'm going to take to 25. And that one's okay. Density, active, and this dissipation, I'm going to 4. Next, go to viewport preview. And the channel, I'm going to change to density. Now go to rendering, go to smoke shader, go to mapping, and channel, I'm going to take density. That's all my settings. Highly recommend you make this a save point, because sometimes it will crash. I'm going to open up Octane, just to have a better view. Put Octane to the side, go to turbulence and click on simulation window, which is already here, and click start. So it's going to take a little bit of time. Okay, so I'm going to stop that on 474. I should have said before, your simulation is going to run for the duration you've put in this part here. It's 1,000 frames. It was going to run for 1,001 frames up here. So if you want the jetpack to switch off, I would suggest to amend this. Also, if you go to timing, you can set the frame range for when you want the smoke to start and stop. I'm going to leave mine as it is, but when your character is doing his neck stretch and arm stretch, if you want the smoke to start after, you would check it on the timeline when you want it to start and just enter the start from. And when you want it to finish, if you want the jetpack to turn off once he lands, just make sure you know the frame and make the amendment there. So if we rewind that and push play, this is what we got. So for non-Octane users, I think if you render that out, you're going to get your smoke faintly. You can adjust the intensity of the color later. I'll show you. But as I'm using Octane, you can see there's no smoke on his jetpack. So to do that, We're going to go to turbulence container, go to tag, and go to tag, go to octane, and put a octane object tag on. And now you can see some smoke. If you want to make adjustments on that smoke, we can go to particle rendering at the bottom, click on this white box under volume median, and you can fine adjust it here, so you can have it bigger, smaller, darker, just tinker to how you like it. So that's my settings. And if you remember, we've only put one emitter in, so if we zoom in, you can see it's only coming from the right one. So go to jetpack animation, click on jetpack animation, go to spear, go to your turbulence, hold down control and drag that down to your other one. You should have two now. You're going to redo the simulation, so let's click on this again. Now you can see two of them coming out. For my double emitter, the simulation is now complete. So we're going to start with color in the scene. So if we just hide this container first, this is our current render, which is nothing, so we need to add some lights. So we're going to add some 3 spotlights. For standard render, let's drop in a camera and click on area light. Let's move this out to the front and just tilt that a little bit. That's going to be our first light. Control, duplicate that. Gonna move this to the side, have it pointing down a little bit on the spikes, something like that for the second light, and it's going to be the same again for the other side. So duplicate your light, so all 3 lights are shining on the scene. So click on camera, click on turbulence container if you've got it. If you don't have it, don't worry, and click on render. So that's what that's looking like. So if we double click left in the material section, open that up. Okay, so for the first one, check on luminance. So for luminance, I'm going to choose this blue and drag that onto my cone. I'm going to open up the spikes and just control and move your mouse while holding the left button up to duplicate all those. So that's my spikes taken care of. For my base, I'm going to have a different color, so I'm going to control and duplicate this material. For the base, I'm going to choose a red and drag that onto the base. Do a save. Okay, now for these targets, double click, create a new material, go to color and choose a red color. Click OK. I'm going to drag that onto your target. So the next one will be white. So duplicate that by control left. Go back to color. Click on white. That's the second ring. And just color in this ring like so. Color, so click on a green, I'll do, drag that onto the start target. Gonna change the backdrop. I'm gonna have luminance, and okay, so for his jetpack I just chose a simple green color for the jetpack and a black controller. Okay, so set your camera to how you would like it. Check your render. That's going to be the final picture. You're going to save it. You can choose your dimensions. I'm going to go for video, so 2560 by 1440. Standard render. Save. Save it to the desktop. Create a new folder. Standard. So you've chosen your folder and choose your format. I highly recommend you choose a image sequence, so avoid MP4. If it's to crash anytime during the render, you're gonna have to start again. Yeah, so choose a image sequence. I'm gonna choose PNG, and after it's rendered I'll bring it into something like After Effects and convert that to a video. So if everything looks good, choose how many frames you want. I'm going to do it to about 756. We'll call it 755. Change that to 755 there. It's going to go from 0 to 755. All these settings are good. Save it just before and then render. Just quickly in the settings, we don't want that T-pose, so we're just going to start it from the second frame. And you can change this here to 2 if you want, and then click render. Okay, so for Octane users, go to Octane, Live Viewer, and drag that there to the side and render your preview. These lines here are going to be what you render out, so whatever camera angle you choose, just be mindful this is what you're going to see in your final render. Okay, so click on Spike Base, go to Object, Lights, Targeted Area Lights. Those lights will be focusing on the spikes. Let's move this up a little bit and back, and set the power to 30. Try that, and let's duplicate this 2 times. And I'm going to have a light on either side, so move that round, forward, angle it down a bit, something like that. Do the same for the other side. Okay, go to Objects, Camera, click this button, zoom in to fill your screen, and this will be your render in between these 2 lines. Let's just take that off for now so we don't lose that. Okay, so now we are going to texture everything. So let's start with the character first. Go to Create, Extensions, Cinema, 4D Octane, and Octane Material. Double click on that, go to Diffuse, go to where you saved your animations, and you should find your material. So the first one is Diffuse, open that, you can click No. I think it makes too much difference. Normal. It's this one. Roughness. I believe it's this. And I'm not sure about the other one, but we're going to leave that, so that's fine. Drag that onto your character. I'm just going to drag it this way. Save your project. So click on Save. Let's start with this target area. So go to Create, Material, Extensions, Octane Material. Double click on that. It's going to be a very simple color, so I'm going to go to diffuse, go to the color box, double click, and it's going to be red and white, so just find a red. That's looking good. Zoom in a bit and drag your material onto these red ones. Duplicate it by Control, drag left mouse, go back up to diffuse, color, and this one is white, so make it white. Do the same as before, drag that onto your white areas. Okay, if we go to the other side, this is going to be can be any color you want. I chose green, but let's duplicate this again. Hold down Control, move that left, double click, and go to diffuse, color. Gonna choose a green, okay, and drag that on. If you have a big scene, I recommend double clicking on it and naming your materials so it doesn't get confusing, but don't really need to because it's quite a small scene. So for his jetpack, let's use some of the octane materials. So go to materials, open live DB. Seatbelt waist thing for his jetpack. We're going to go to skin, save before you download. And I'm just going to choose leather black. Click download and drag that on to his waist. For his jetpack, open up the materials, we click on metal. I chose this material at the bottom, VK metal one. Save every time, download. And we're just going to drag this onto his jetpack cylinders. So for these emitters, you can just click on here, hold Control, just drag them onto that. So that's the back. Now this one, I chose scratched metal. So open up your materials, save it, and choose whatever you want, but I chose scratched metal, download. Gonna drop that onto there. Also gonna use this little controller. Didn't spend too much time making it. Drop that on, and that character is complete. Now for the spike base, I used scratched metal for the base. For the spikes, open up your materials, and we're going to choose steel. Make sure you save it. Drag that onto the spike. I'm going to open up the spikes and just copy it from here. So just Control. The last thing we've got to do is the backdrop. Going to extensions, octane material, and go to diffuse. I'm going to choose gradient. Double click here. You can choose any color. I'm going to choose though a blue. Leave that as a white, and drop that on to the backdrop. Okay, so almost there. Now you can see that this is a little bit too high, so let's bring that down for me. I'm going to do the same for this one. Before you render out, just make sure everything is okay. Looks like the feet aren't touching now, so quick fix, just make it bigger, taller. I think I chose 775. Double click that. Run through your scene, make sure everything's looking okay. Okay, so if you're happy with that, go back to your camera. I'm going to start this from frame 2, so it's not in the T-pose. I'm going to have a slight push with the camera, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Click on camera, keyframe that. We're going to go to 775, so go to the end. And I'm just going to hold 2 and move my mouse forward while holding left button. Keyframe, rewind it. Just make sure everything's okay. You might want to make sure his head is in the scene, so if it's chopped off here, you can just bring this back a little bit. And everything's looking good. I think I'm going to change the the background are not too keen. I'll go to diffuse, you can keep it. I'm just going to have it without a gradient, a non-gradient one. So I'm going to save that now, go to settings, at the renderer, make sure you change that to octane. These are the settings I use, so you can copy it if you want. Go to octane render and use all GPs. Go to output. I'm going to have it as 2560 1440. The frames I'm going to have from frame 2 to here it says 775. That's okay. Choose your destination. So I'm gonna create a new folder. Call this Jetpack Octane. So I've chosen my save. I'm gonna do a PNG sequence. Okay, that's all good. Now in Octane settings, you can tweak it to make it a little bit better. For this though, I think I'm gonna keep direct lighting. Gonna change it to no, 400. The higher you go up, the longer the render is gonna be, so I don't want to spend it too long. I'm gonna choose adaptive sampling. Okay, so that's my settings. I've just changed max samples, specular depth 4, glossy depth 4, diffuse depth 2, and turned on adaptive sampling. Save it before you render. Render out. Here on your first render is a good way to check if you're not quite happy with anything, like I've missed this part. You can start again and just tweak it and then render out again. Yeah. So 775 frames. Just check your first render frame. If it's taken too long, you can reduce some of the settings. You know, those max samples, maybe bring down to 300, you diffuse, and those other ones you can bring down to like 3 or something, but you'll lose a little bit of quality. Like so. The f did I do?